But the fake news, CNN has turned it into a scandal because they need Trump for their ratings. And here's the pattern of how they turn real news into fake news. You can see it in this example, and you've seen it a number of other times. Once you see the pattern, it's just kind of funny. They use the same trick. First, they'll take an audio or a videotape that's longish, and they'll cut out a quote that's out of context. Where have you seen that done? You saw that with the Covington kids. You saw it with the Fine People hoax. And you saw it with the drinking bleach or injecting disinfectant hoaxes. In each case, if you had heard the entire piece, you would have said to yourself, that's the opposite of what the news said. For example, in the Fine People hoax, before the quote that was taken, Trump talked about the people who were there who were not racist, just there for the statues. And then after that, he made sure that you knew that he was condemning totally the neo-Nazis and the racists who were there. But if you take out the clarification and also the context that they started and just show the clip, looks like he called Nazis fine people. If you look at the Covington kids clip, all they do is clip out the parts, before and after, and it looks like the kid is the bad person. But if you see the whole clip, it's obvious that the person he was with, or the guy who claimed to be a Native American, or he was, I don't remember the story, you could tell that he was the aggressor. Likewise with the drinking bleach hoax, if you hear it in all of its context, you hear the first part where the president sets it up as talking about light as a disinfectant, then he talks about it, and then he clarifies about light. So if you don't hear that he set it up as light, and then he wrapped it up as light, and all they take out is injecting disinfectant, that's how they create the hoax. Now, the fake edit is not enough by itself. All right, that's not enough by itself. You need the other steps, and I'll get to them. All right, so in the case of this phone call, what they took on a quote, they took little pieces on a quote and where he's saying stuff that makes it sound as if he's pressuring him to cheat. Now, the opposite is happening. Trump is pressuring him to look into allegations to make sure that nobody cheated. That is literally the opposite of asking him to, as CNN reports it, find votes. So the second part of this is that the fake news will use persuasion primers. These are words, wit, and phrases which, if you hear them at the same time you've heard the story for the first time, they prime you to see the story a certain way. These are brainwashing persuasion primers. None of this is an accident. They know how to do this. It's the fourth time in a row you've seen it. Same pattern every time. So the primer words that they use in this case are pressured, to find votes. Here's another way to describe exactly what you heard on the audio. The president forcefully was promoting his idea that the people in charge should look into the allegations of fraud so that the public can understand that the election was either clean, which would be good, or they'd find out it wasn't, which would be good in another way. So did that sound like pressuring to find votes, meaning manufacture them out of nothing? Did that sound the same? Because what I said was just objectively true. You listen to it. He's making his case. He's presenting his claims for fraud. He says, we just want a fair vote. We just want to know. I just want you to look into it. That's all. But if you hear pressured and find votes and you pair it with a clip which doesn't have the rest of the context, it looks like what? A mob boss talking. They like to use the things that you've believed before. Now, because the whole he's a mob boss was already a meme, they just take a meme that is already active in your mind and they just attach a new thing to it. It's much easier to attach fake news to an existing meme. Oh, he's like a mob boss. Yeah, whenever he makes a private phone call or thinks it's private, he talks like a mob boss. And here he is making a phone call like a mob boss. Now, if you listen to it, there wasn't anything even close to talking like a mob boss. I mean, not even close to anything like that. The tone was not that. It was just asking for something to be looked into. That was it. And the boldness with which they try this is amazing. Here's some more phrases from CNN. The president was caught on tape. Caught on tape. Now, what do you imagine is true of somebody who was caught on tape? Well, they're guilty. What does it mean to be on a recording if you were caught? They're signaling that he's guilty before they've even told you what the content is. That's a primer. That's brainwashing, right? So he was caught on tape. No, he wasn't caught on tape. There was simply an audio tape which has been available to the public in which not much of anything happened. That's not even close to being caught. And by the way, I prefer presidents who don't get caught on audio. Here's another sentence directly out of CNN's coverage that the tape, quote, exposes the depth of his corruption. Suppose you knew there was a long tape, you only heard one part of it, which was something about finding votes, and then you read CNN saying that this tape exposes the depth of his corruption. Wouldn't you kind of think that the parts you didn't hear were more confirming the depth of his corruption? Nothing like that on the tape. Not even close. Nothing even in that general category of corruption. Not even close. It's just him asking for data to be looked at because they've got some claims. They would like some data to be released by the state to make sure the claims are true or false. Just nothing like exposing a depth of corruption. He literally just asked questions. That's it. They said it was a smoking gun. Anytime you hear any of these phrases, you're being brainwashed. These are not news phrases. They're not even close to news. It's just straight up brainwashing at this point. And then step 3, they Bernstein it. So, you bring in Bernstein or Bernstein? Bernstein? It's Bernstein, right? So they bring in Bernstein just to say it's worse than Watergate. Literally, just to say that. Now, have I taught you the trick of having a big opening offer? So if you're negotiating, which is in a way similar to persuading, and at least in the way I'm going to use it now, if you start with a big opening offer, it anchors people to the first thing they heard. So if I say to you, I'm going to sell you my car, and it's worth $250,000. The first thing you think is, there's no car you drive that's worth $250,000. Well, that's true. It's not worth that, or anywhere near it. But it's the first number you hear. So now I say, all right, maybe it's not worth $250,000, but man, I'd like to get $100,000 for it. Now the $100,000 doesn't sound so bad because you got primed with the $250,000. And even though the thing is only worth $35,000 used, suddenly the 100 doesn't sound so bad because you got primed with that $250,000. That's what Bernstein does. The worse than Watergate guy comes in to give you the first offer. Worse than Watergate. And in your mind, you're like, whoa, that's big. Now later, when you get more, let's say you get more information about what was on there, you're already primed. So maybe you come down a little from worse than Watergate in your mind, but you're like, yeah, I'm not sure it's quite worse than Watergate, but sounds like it's pretty bad. See? So that's how the brainwashing works. Start with a big offer, it's worse than Watergate. And then it's hard to get you off that, no matter how much data comes out later. They use repetition because if they say it enough, you'll think it's true. If you hear a news story or item 100 times, you're going to believe it's more true than if you heard it once. It's just how your brain is operating. They make you think past the sale. So you've got things like exposing his depth of corruption or caught on tape. Those are manipulation phrases to make you think past the sale. The sale is whether anything bad happened. And they're making you think it is exposing the depth of his corruption by making you think of all the other corruption it's like. But they haven't made the sale. They're making you think past it. There's no sale that anything bad happened. They're making you think all the way to not only did it happen, but it's like this other stuff that turns out didn't happen either. All right. Then, of course, you do the mind reading. What is the president's state of mind? Yeah, he's thinking like a mob boss, and he's trying to pressure this guy. He's not trying to get justice. No, in his mind, it's not about justice, because CNN could read his mind. You can't, but they can. They got pundits with powers, and they read his mind, and they find out that no, despite all of his words that clearly and repeatedly say he just wants to know what happened, and can we see the data, please? Now, there's some legal reasons it's hard to give him the data, but that's a separate story. But if you mind read him, none of that's happening. He's just trying to be a dictator. And then the most important part, which is disappearing the debunks. So this video, which is debunking it thoroughly, will not be highly rated on social media. And so anybody who's going to do what I just did will just sort of get disappeared. Now, you might say to yourself, well, that's CNN, right? CNN's crazy, but at least people will go over to Fox News and they'll read the real story. They might even agree with you, Scott. And they might even be on the same side. So you go over to this Fox News and you look for the story, and good luck finding it. Now, I don't know what's up with Fox News, but I would think this would be like one of the big stories as opposed to not mentioned. So take that for whatever it means. I would think this one would be mentioned, but must be a story there. I'm sure Fox News will cover it eventually, and the opinion shows later today will cover it, of course.